Hello everybody and welcome to Ramble Reacts. Newcastle booted Manchester City out of the Cup and Chelsea won a match. It's Thursday 28th of September. I'm Marcus Speller.
And I'm Andy Russell.
Hello everybody, welcome to Ramble Reacts. Good to have you with us. We've still got the afterglow of the Carabao Cup last night. Andy Brassel, your local side, now that you're the MP for Newcastle, in as much as you travel down to London a few days a week and then you go back up to your constituency, but they still are your local club. They beat Manchester City 1-0. The quadruple is dead for Man City, Andy.
I was going to say,
but it's still alive for those Geordie boys. What did you think of the game?
It was a very interesting game. The first half and the second half were night and day. I couldn't really understand the commentary's obsession with the fact that Newcastle were having none of the ball in the first half. I mean, really, it is an upshot of, well, A, playing Manchester City, and B, the squad that Newcastle have at the moment. They don't have a Man City type squad, even if they're looking to go in that direction. You know, when you're starting your game with Jamaal, Lascelles and Paul Dummett, although
lovely to see him,
acquitted themselves excellently. You know, it's an indication of where you are in terms of depth. So, you know, slating them for not being more progressive when, you know, you only have half a good team on the pitch, I think is a bit weird. Having said that, they turned it around really nicely second half. But in terms of subs, are we saying Eddie Howe outwitted or out-actioned, at least, Pep Guardiola? Because you've got the greatest striker in world football just sat around on the bench, stood around on the touchline for a bit, and there are so many moments where you think, if Haaland had been on the pitch for that ball coming in the box, it would have made a massive difference. I mean, it didn't, to me, feel like Guardiola was massively desperate to win it.
Yeah, do you think they're bored of winning it?
Well, it was like their gateway drug, and now they're
now they've done the treble.
They're knee deep in the second hour of train spotting.
Yeah, I think that there was always talk of the quadruple, wasn't there, because of that incredible season they had. When I say the only one, but they finished with just the league and the League Cup, I think it was, when Wigan knocked them out of the FA Cup. Whereas now they won the treble, obviously, last season. Do you think they think to themselves, do you know what, that's fine. Like, we'll just do the treble. That's what we're after, okay? The quadruple proved a bridge too far. We all got our knickers in a twist over that. Let's just concentrate on that. Because Guardiola's already talked about the defence of the Champions League. They're flying in the Premier League. Obviously, they want to win this competition. You want to win every competition you enter. But he did talk about giving some players more of a chance and whatnot. So it didn't surprise me hugely that he didn't throw everything at it, although they were pressurising Newcastle towards the end of the game. But then at one point, you say that maybe he wasn't that bothered or whatever. He was quite literally spitting with anger when he got that yellow card, wasn't he? Did you see? There was a lot of flob. I don't like to see that at the best of times. But Guardiola was very, very angry, and he was doing that thing where he was like nodding, going, all right, yeah. And I thought to myself, did any lip reader catch him saying, oh, see you at the back gate after, mate? Do you know what I mean? So I think they played a good side in Newcastle. Newcastle obviously made changes as well. It's not as bad as being beaten by Nathan Jones as Southampton, is all I'm saying.
It's not as much of an honour as being beaten by Nathan Jones in Southampton, because that puts you in a more niche category. I guess the thing that struck me with Guardiola, because he spoke pre-match about, he made that little joke about having a game. You know, if he could get a game, maybe give himself 20 minutes or whatever, didn't he? And when he was on the touchline getting yellow carded, that's the thing, isn't it, about coaches getting carded? It feels like, especially if they're a great player, they're back in the zone of being in it again. I wonder if there was a little bit of itching. Now he's got his back sorted. He thinks, you know what, I wouldn't mind a kickabout.
Yeah, well, I mean, he obviously didn't bring himself on because that would have been ludicrous. He did bring on a few players, Doku, Núñez and Phil Foden, which suggested that he was going for it. So I understand it wasn't Haaland, But of course they wanted to win. But they did, and that period where Newcastle straight out the traps in the second half, that's where the game was won. Of course, that's where the goal was scored from Alexander Isak, who, by the way, talking about spitting with anger and so on. A couple of times of late, he got one against Sheffield United. He scored one today. He almost looked quite zombie-like, when he scored, baring his teeth. He was very, much more lively for a zombie, I should say. But maybe a snarling dog, Andy. He snarled a bit in celebration when he got that goal. Why do you think that is? He's missed a little bit of football here and there. He's just so delighted. He's so pumped up. I mean, we saw him when he made that interception not long after the goal. He was celebrating to the crowd. There was a lot of fire in his belly.
He is one of those players who I think is felt since he arrived at Newcastle as if he's really pumped by the atmosphere at St James's Park. It does something with him, and he's really connected with those fans, which is great. But the difference he was able to make during the second half, it did underline, I hate to go back to it again, the Haaland thing. I know you're saying Guardiola went for it because he brought on Foden, he brought on Núñez, and he brought on Doku. And by the way, Doku, you can just tell that Guardiola is going to make him into one of the best players in the world already, can't you? In these couple of weeks, it's been obvious. But the fact is, City can say they want to win it or wanted to win it until they're blue in the face. They finished the game without a proper sense of order. I mean, they took Alvarez off as well. So what is the sense in that? There were so many moments where you thought, how are they going to score a goal? You should never be thinking that about Manchester City, should you?
Newcastle was solid, though, so they didn't give them much room. I mean, the Newcastle midfield, when you got Joelinton in there, Andy, running around and so on, making tackles, making plays, he's quite the force to be reckoned with. There was a great tackle at one point in this game by the young lad, Livramento, of course. Hotly tipped. It was excellent. To be... Yeah, but he was tipped when he was at Southampton to go on to be like an England international and so on. How highly do you rate him?
From what I've seen, really highly. He looks great. I think he's ideal for this season because, people are saying Kieran Trippier's in the way. Well, if Newcastle go deep in competitions like they want to, Kieran Trippier's not going to play 50 games this season, and he shouldn't be playing 50 games this season at his age. He's vital and he needs to be protected. And also, Livramento can play in midfield. I think we've seen that as well. But yeah, really, really impressive performance from him. As far as Joelinton goes, he's become such an extraordinary player and so important for them. And I don't really think there's a player who embodies what Eddie Howe has done to Newcastle as much as Joelinton. Of course, the signings have been really important. We know about the resources, all of that sort of stuff. But it's how he's got more out of existing players who just didn't look any good before he turned up as well, before Howe turned up. And Joelinton's the most obvious one. Also, I think we've worked out a little mystery. Like people who watched a lot of Casemiro in Spain talked about his invisibility cloak, how he could make loads of bookable fouls and not get cautioned for any of them. And he got sent off twice in his first season in England, didn't he? And people were wondering if he left it in Madrid. I think he's just loaned it to Joelinton because now he can do that thing of making all these bookable fouls and getting away with it. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, Casemiro's chipped in with a few more goals than people thought made. So maybe that was the payoff, wasn't it? Maybe he had to trade in that invisibility cloak.
And a few more than Joelinton, actually, as well.
Yeah, true. Well, there you go. So it backs it up. If you've got the cloak, you're not only invisible to the referee, but sometimes your teammates in the final third of the pitch. But it was a great win for Newcastle nonetheless. It really, really was. It's another marquee result. No two ways about that. I've said this a few times on the podcast before. I don't think Eddie Howe kind of gets the credit he deserves with what's going on here. And that's partly, or perhaps mainly, to do with the whole ownership business with Newcastle United. Yeah. Obviously, we know the controversy and so on and so forth. They've bought well. They have spent a fair few quid. It is fair to say. But Eddie Howe, with not a massive CV going into that club, has gone in there. They're playing, and he spoke the other day, didn't he, when they beat Sheffield United 8-0, and he spoke about the desire to entertain. And the Newcastle fans, having had such a awful time with Mike Ashley and whatnot and terrible football, yes, they've got money to spend now, whatever one may think of where that money comes from. But Eddie Howe has got them playing an electrifying kind of style, really. They're great to watch. The passion is there for all to see, personified in that Isak block we spoke about earlier.
Mm.
And the team spirit as well. We talk about these players coming in. They come in and they've slotted in here. You know, this wasn't a fortuitous backs to the walls kind of job. This was a very, very good performance and a comfortable 1-0 win against, albeit a weakened Man City, but it's still Manchester City, and as we say, Newcastle weakened as well. Eddie Howe has just... The City is now pumping for the team. And the spirit and all the rest of it that he's instilled in there, perhaps with the help of his good friend old Tyndall, Mad Dog... I think sometimes, Andy, when we talk about Newcastle, we sometimes forget to give old Eddie a bit of credit.
Yeah, I think the job he's done really is extraordinary, because I think, like as you say, the resources are clear. I would say they play good football. They play good football to watch sometimes, not always.
Okay. I was maybe a little... See, I'm getting caught up in it as well, Andy.
Look, it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. You feel free to disagree with me. I think the thing that really strikes me is that on the basis of what he did at Bournemouth, you never would have picked him as the person to sort the defence out. And that's what he's done, which is remarkable. Yeah. I mean, we talk about this little run that they're on at the moment. Since they rolled over Brentford, which was a game they really need to win because they were on the back of 3 successive losses there. And it felt as if, you know, they're having a real after the Lord Mayor show start to the season. 4 games, no goals conceded. And I think that is the key, really. And if you look at them this season, they're going to find it very, very hard to repeat what they did last season. Because like I said, I just don't think the squad's good enough yet. If they get further in the Champions League, and even if they don't get further in the Champions League, it's really going to occupy their minds and their bodies. And it's going to take a lot out of them. I think that when you look at what he's put in place, that they are athletic, that they can dig in. All of that stuff is really, really important. To be able to get results when you're at 70 or 80% of your best, I mean, that is something that's really impressive. And, you know, they weren't start to finish brilliant tonight, for example. You know, they struggled a little bit in the first half, even though, as I said, I thought some of the criticism of them was, and the way they approached the game was a little bit unfair. But I think that is the main thing for them, really. The fact that he's made them so incredibly disciplined. Whatever happens next with Eddie Howe and whatever happens next with Newcastle, he will walk out of this job and people will look at him differently. People, you know, they thought he was a coach of promise. And when people linked him with the England job in the past, it's because, well, no one of renown really wanted it. He was English and promising. Whereas now, you could see how, whether it's not necessarily the next coach of England, but maybe 2 England coaches down the line or whatever, you could see him being able to do a good job for England. I think if people mentioned him as a future England manager, people wouldn't find that outrageous. And that's a comment on how well he's done in 2 years, because money or not, they were dreadful when he took over. And, you know, he's made a massive impact.
I'm glad you're talking about England, Andy. We should never lose sight of the big picture on the Football Ramble. Newcastle have drawn Manchester United at Old Trafford in the next round of the Cup. So they do have a chance to pay them back somewhat. It wouldn't be a full payback because Man United beat them in the final of this competition. But if they could get a result there... No, it's not the big payback, as you say, Andy.
No.
But it would be something. But Eddie Howe certainly... paid the cost to be the boss.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be a bit more keep the change, you filthy animal, wouldn't it?
Oh dear. Liverpool beat Leicester 3-1 at home. So there was no cup set, Andy, even though you thought this wouldn't be a cup set if Leicester won it, which it clearly would have been. It didn't happen, so we don't have to have that debate. We've all been spared of that, thank goodness.
No.
Leicester did lead after just a few minutes, of course, and I did think to myself, I'm looking forward to a good old ding-dong with Andy, but Liverpool put that to bed. Dominik Szoboszlai pinged in an absolute beauty. A very, very satisfying goal.
It's very satisfying, but let's not get to Szoboszlai. Casey McAteer, who scored for Leicester, was playing for Wimbledon last season. So talk about flying up the leagues. He looked a good player, but to become a good player for like a championship side, or as we were saying earlier on yesterday's Ramble, almost a Premier League side that's on loan to the Championship. It was very impressive. He's had a really good start to the season. He's a good player.
Can we talk about Szoboszlai now?
Yeah, go on. The thing is, it's obvious. What is there to say? He's absolutely one of the best shooters in world football from distance. That's all there is to say.
Yeah, but it's nice when someone proves that, though, Andy, because he did come with this reputation. I think that it's been a little bit underplayed how good a shooter he was or is. So to see him start to ping them in, it's wonderful stuff, and it's a player that not many of us really knew much about. We've seen him a bit with Hungary. Obviously, Hungary have humbled England a couple of times recently. But for those of us who are not as well entrenched in Bundesliga territory as you are, to see this reputation come into fruition in the Premier League, because it only counts in the Premier League, Andy, let's be honest.
Well, it doesn't count for Leipzig, does it? Let's be honest.
So, well, there you go. But one of the things that we've found out recently about old Dominik is that apparently he has unusually small feet for a big man. He's 6'1" and is a UK size 7. Now, I don't think a UK size 7 is that small, but if you're over 6 foot, then I suppose
it is.
It would be a little bit on the small side.
But I think Dominik's the winner here, because as anyone who's like I'm similar height to him, and I'm a size 10. All the best trainers in size 10 sell out really quickly. So he's laughing. I guess if he was size 6, that would be a great walk around, because he would still be able to get kids size shoes.
Yeah, so that would be perfect.
Really, he's just missed out. I mean, of course, there are some footballers who like to soak their feet in cold water and go a size down, so they feel more contact with the ball. So maybe he'd score even more long distance goals and save money on his shoes if he wore a size 6.
Blimey, you are like the Martin Lewis of the Premier League right now. The money-saving expert Andy Brassel reaching out to those Premier League footballers.
I want to improve his athletic performance as well.
Yeah, okay. But you could save 40 quid, mate. Apparently, Ferenc Puskás and Diego Maradona also had unusually small feet. So he's in good company.
Mm. But they were both sub 6 foot, weren't they? So
that is very true, yeah. Diego Maradona also had a very, very small penis in that photo. Do you remember on Match of the Day?
It's always about England with you, isn't it? It's always about England.
Diego Jota scored a lovely one for Liverpool last night, Andy. Lovely little flick. Good to see him among the goals.
Yeah, beautiful. And lovely run by Kwanzaa to create it for him as well. He's been really impressive start this season.
Yeah, Liverpool, they've obviously got Bournemouth away in the next round of the Cup. How do you feel about Liverpool this season, Andy? They're second in the league, going pretty well. They still... the trouble is, I'm comparing them to Liverpool 2 or 3 years ago, which is one of the best Premier League sides we've ever seen. So they're obviously not at that level, and they will always come off second best when compared to those teams, because they were just so flipping good. So I'm looking at them in the table thinking, good start, scoring goals, etc., etc. But I'm just not quite convinced that they'll be there when at the end of the season for the title race. But then that might be being a bit harsh there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they've got every reason to be optimistic. I think the start is probably better results-wise than it is performance-wise. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, okay, that's a good way of summing it up.
And I think what's remarkable to me is the games against Chelsea and Bournemouth and Liverpool and Newcastle, which all could have yielded different results. And for large parts of the 2 away games in particular, they didn't look like they were gonna win those games. And after McAllister got incorrectly red carded, that they were under the cosh for quite a while against the Bournemouth side that still haven't won. So I think it's because they've been more impressive of late, and because when they slap you with their front players, they really slap you with their front players. I think it's easy to forget that part of the season. It's weird. It's as if they've almost had 2 seasons already, even though we're 6-7 games into the season. So, look, I think the encouraging thing for Liverpool is you can see what they're doing, you can see how they're improving, the results are good, and I think there's still quite a big margin for them to get better. As I think you do from what you were saying there before.
Yeah,
I think,
definitely, yeah.
Like the midfield 3 that will eventually be the midfield 3, I think almost picks itself. I think Endo, McAllister and Szoboszlai are really complementary. I think you've got something to cover all bases there. They're already much more athletic in midfield, and we talked about what that did for Newcastle in a different situation. That's what Liverpool really needed going into this season. Protects their defence a little bit more, and Endo will protect their defence better, I think. And Darwin is, I think, going to have an absolutely massive season. I mean, we've only really seen small sample size of him so far this season, but it's very promising.
It is indeed. Well, as I say, they're away to Bournemouth in the next round, so they'll be favourites for that one. Chelsea beat Brighton 1-0. Chelsea winning their first game since beating your beloved AFC Wimbledon in the previous round of the Carabao Cup.
I mean, obviously, I didn't see this game, Marcus. I'm willing to bet that they had more on target shots against Brighton than they did against Wimbledon. They had 1 shot on target in the first half of that game against Wimbledon, and it was a penalty. I mean, it was one of those ones where you thought, like there've been loads of changes. Yeah, as we were saying about all the other teams, and we were saying about the Football League teams on yesterday's Ramble, Wimbledon made loads of changes as well. And, it was just pass, and they weren't creating anything. And it was one of those things.
It's difficult to create against Wimbledon.
Yeah, that's it. Well, it wasn't last season. But I think you look at that. Now, I remember, it's a very particular context, obviously, playing a League Two side. You can't really win because, if you thrash them, everyone says you're expected to do that. And if you struggle, you get it in the neck. But everything I've seen of Chelsea so far, it's like the back end of last season. It doesn't look like they're going to score a lot of goals. And what I would say, though, from tonight, which is obviously very positive, has there been a player who's needed a goal as badly as Nicholas Jackson at such an early stage in the season, having already scored in the season?
Yes, no, Andy, I completely agree with you. You put in those parameters, but I think they're fair. I mean, I tell you what, though, old Sanchez in goal for Chelsea, I think he'd forgotten, didn't he, who he was playing for a couple of times early on in the game. Flipping Nora. How Brighton didn't score at all last night, it was absolutely outrageous. I felt sorry for the travelling support, but I mean they'll be back in action soon and among the goals and whatnot. But it was a big win for Chelsea. Mauricio Pochettino said with regards to whether it could be a turning point, he said it should be, it must be, it's about time. It
won't be.
You can see the cogs turning. He said, today there were many positive things. Today we saw the players fighting to give their best. Well, I'll tell you what, the Lemons are beginning to show their worth. They did muck up the team sheet, though, in the media box. They listed Andre Santos instead of Cole Palmer in the starting 11. And, of course, Santos is on loan at Nottingham Forest. So not all the I's have been dotted and not all the T's have been crossed. But in Cole Palmer, Andy, they do have a very good player, and he seemed to be among all the good stuff they did against Brighton last night. Yeah, and
look, I think the way he started the season with Manchester City, he's really unlucky to get sold by them. But, you have to sacrifice someone sooner or later, don't you? Not that kind of sacrifice. I think, you look at what Pep Guardiola said when he got rid of Toni Kroos at Bayern Munich, for example. He said, I'd love to keep everyone and pay everyone, but you can't keep everyone and pay everyone. It's just not realistic. And
we never heard of Toni Kroos ever again.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the concern really is for Palmer that, he's a very good player who needs games and needs encouragement, but it's so hard to see what Chelsea are actually doing at the moment. So if you want Palmer to succeed, it's not easy to succeed there. That doesn't mean he won't. And, I think in terms of this, Chelsea needed this a lot more than Brighton because I think of the way the season's gone so far. And also, it's never a good thing when you get beaten, obviously. But with Brighton, it feels to me like they're going to take a little bit of time getting to grips with European competition, which, bear in mind, Roberto De Zerbi's not got an enormous amount of experience in himself. So for them to lose one of the cups, I don't think, off the fixture list, I don't think is the worst thing in the world.
No, I don't think they're going to lose too much sleep over this. Chelsea, on the other hand, will be hosting Blackburn Rovers in the next round, where they'll be heavy favourites, of course, despite Blackburn putting Cardiff City to the sword. So they'll be looking forward to that because they do have a bit of pedigree so far in this competition this season. Everton beat Aston Villa away 2-1. Of course, back-to-back victories for big Shawnee Dyche's boys. It does mean that the Sean Dyche derby will be happening in the next round because Burnley will be going to Goodison Park. I said this about the game against Brentford. I didn't see the win coming for Everton. And I didn't see this one as well, Andy. I would have thought Aston Villa and Emery would have had their eyes on the League Cup, of course, or going deep in it. But Everton came to town and Dominic Calvert-Lewin back among the goals.
Yeah, it's so good to see Calvert-Lewin back and fit and scoring goals. It's just terrific because he's just had a miserable time, and it's been really sad to see. We know what a good player he can be when he's on it.
Everton looks so much better with him inside.
He makes an enormous difference. The thing is, because of the situation that they're in, they could never afford to replace him with an equivalent player of how good he is when he's totally fit. So it's been a bit of DIY in the meantime. But if he's fit and in decent form, in anywhere near decent form, it makes a huge difference to their season. And I mean, whereas Villa, I think, will be very disappointed because they've had a pretty rubbish start in the cups, really, haven't they? We're going down to Legia in that first game, though. They're still massive favourites for the Conference League. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and they'll get out the group, etc. But with this, it did feel like a winnable. I totally agree, especially with the direction in which they're hoping to go. Now, I guess with Everton, after all the difficulties they had, is this what's going to happen? Newcastle get all the way to the Carabao Cup final. I think this year it's our year. We've knocked Man United out. They can't stop us. And they get beaten by Everton in the final. What do you reckon?
That would be quite something. Well, Andy, talking of what will happen in the Cup, we do know that Mansfield Town are hosting Port Vale, which means one of these two will be in the quarter-final of the Cup, which is quite something. Exeter City also hosting Middlesbrough, so one of them will be through. You'd imagine Middlesbrough would be favourites for that one. It is one of the longest and most arduous away trips in English football, surely, just thinking about that.
Yeah, but like Middlesbrough's south to me. I mean, whatever.
Middlesbrough's south. You've changed now. You used to be a Londoner. Is that Middlesbrough to Exeter? Oh, no, it was Plymouth Airport where they opened up a little flight path for Neil Warnock when he was Middlesbrough manager.
Yeah.
Maybe Exeter could put on the Warnock route or something, as it's probably well known.
It probably is. It probably is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, indeed. Well, look, I do know that my beloved Fulham, they're through in the Cup. They beat, obviously, the David Wagner group. They are away to Ipswich in the next round.
Ooh, that could be fun.
Yeah, I saw what happened in the Wolves game.
Remember, Marcus, take no change. You're getting in for 25 quid if you're listening to yesterday's Ramble.
Take no change and take no prisoners. It's the Andy Brassel way. Andy, before we leave this Ramble Reacts, I just wanted to talk to you very quickly about Victor Osimhen, because he started for Napoli and scored against Udinese last night in a 4-1 victory. Will that ease the tension between him and the club, of course, because it's a bit of an odd situation, that one, at the moment, really, between those two.
Yeah, I mean, how he's been treated has been pretty shameful, and the club have got a lot of making up to do. When he scored the goal last night, all his teammates jumped on him and made a big deal of him and made sure he knew that he was loved. But it's going to take a bit more than that, and we'll be unpacking it on OTC later today.
Excellent. You'll be on with Dotton and David Cartledge, of course.
Yeah.
If I may just add something tiny, if you've not seen this, do check out OTC, because it seems utterly extraordinary that Victor Osimhen, one of the most informed strikers in world football, obviously fantastic last year when Napoli were incredible in Serie A, and yet the club were mugging him off on social media. It just seems ridiculous to me that whoever's running that social media account, well, a change of career might be preferable all round there. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to today's Ramble Reacts. Andy and I will be back tomorrow with Jim and Vish for the preview show, so get your ears around that lot come Friday. In the meantime, find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram and YouTube at Football Ramble, and remember to subscribe on your podcast app. Nice one, Andy Brassel.
Thank you.
Nice one, Carabao. We'll see you on Friday.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.